Welcome to Brent's Anime Recommendation Corner, where I talk about anime that I love, and today I'm talking about Lupin the Third: Green vs. Red. One of the innumerable Lupin movies, which is quite unusual, because this is a Lupin movie about what it means to be Lupin the Third. This is a movie in which Lupin discovers multiple other Lupins in the world.
Oh. Yeah.
And in which apparently there are copycats of Lupin running around. Which then turns into this whole, really interesting story about what it means to be Lupin the Third. Who is Lupin the Third? If someone came up to you and said, I am Lupin the Third, how do you know that's true? Right? He's the strange international jewel thief. I could claim to be Lupin the Third. Maybe I am. It's really, really interesting. And it is a full-scale Lupin adventure. There's, exotic locales and excitement and such. But as the movie goes on, it gets wilder and wilder as it explores this question of identity and this question of kind of reality. What is real and what isn't real? As we dive into things like, is the original Lupin the Third even Lupin the Third? How much of him is a construct created by people around him? How much is his reputation him versus his actual actions? Right? How much of what people think is Lupin the Third is actually Lupin the Third? Does he do all the things that is claimed of him? Right? It's surprisingly deep for a Lupin the Third movie.
Yeah.
It's really cool. And there are tons of references to classic Lupin the Third stories as well. So you will get the little yellow Renault, barreling along and going up a cliff, like in Castle Cagliostro. You get a lot of those little references going in the movie. It's really cool. It's really fun. And again, it's a full-scale Lupin the Third adventure to boot. All the classic budget, all that kind of stuff going, and just a lot of interesting things going in this one movie. And it kind of takes you on a ride. So, a lot of fun, worth tracking down in one of the more unusual Lupin the Third adventures.
Now, where does this occur in this sort of Lupiniverse time? Is this people said, what about Lupin's background? And it's like, okay, enough asking. Finally got somebody saying, okay, well, let's explore that. Let's not just have him do funny stuff. Let's explore what's going on. That kind of thing?
I think you misunderstood what I was saying earlier. Who knows? Right?
Yeah, so there's actually, if I remember correctly, there's not a real resolution.
That is about
it's been a little while since I've seen it.
Yeah.
It was not a real, think of it this way. You know how you read about stories like autobiographical accounts that are told by someone who's known to be a liar? So you don't know what is true and what isn't true, but you have this autobiographical account. Mm-hmm. Actually, it's something I did for the channel the other day. I read a bit from something like that. So it's kind of like that, where you have the original Lupin in there, and he's telling part of the story, only part of the story, but you don't even know if what he's telling you is accurate or is true.
Exactly.
So you don't really know. Right?
Yeah.
So what you have to do is you have to place your faith in going, okay, the guy who's telling us this is the actual Lupin. We think.
Right.
But it does, to your point, John, it does dive back into his past to some extent.
Yeah.
And being, the grandson of the original Lupin and all that. But I think it also, if I recall, Steve, and it's been a little while, I believe it also even references the original French book that it's based on. Because there is a French novel about a jewel thief named Lupin, which was an inspiration for Lupin III. Which, by the way, if you ever go on Netflix, there is a live-action Netflix Lupin movie
of the book
of the French book. It was made in France as an adaptation of the French book.
Ooh,
It's very interesting.
Huh?
So yeah, none of the other characters in it is just about the original Lupin. Like Lupin the First, technically. But yeah, it's really interesting. It's a really remarkable, unusual little film. So.
It sounds like it would be interesting, almost as like a live action film, like not based, not the one that's based on the French book, but which is a weird reference, but Zorro that had Anthony Hopkins in it, and Antonio Banderas, and how it was passing the sort of sword on to the younger kid to now become Zorro. And it's like, that's what you're sort of describing. It's like, okay, Lupin the Third, if this was a live action series, it's like, oh, this film makes perfect sense because you're saying, haha, but is Lupin the Third really Lupin? Yeah. It could be anybody. You just assume the mantle of Lupin. It could be given to you. It could be just you take it over and people associate it. But it's like
Dread Pirate Roberts.
Lupin's. Yeah, I mean Lupin's a cartoon, so he'll be the same age forever.
Yep.
Like not that much of a worry about who's going to inherit the mantle.
Which actually one of the things they point out is that no one could possibly have had all the adventures Lupin has had.
Right.
Over the past 20 years, whatever many years it's been, right? It's like that's not realistic either. It's a cartoon, right? But yeah. So it's a really fun film. I would say it's definitely targeted more towards people who are familiar with the Lupin franchise. So I wouldn't make this your first Lupin movie, but once you've seen a couple, it'll definitely
you get the gist of it.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah,
is the cast of characters there? So his female friend, what is it, Jigen?
Jigen is the guy with the gun.
Who's his buddy with the beard?
Yep. Yeah, Fujiko is the woman.
His femme fatale, if you will.
Exactly. Yep.
Zenigata's the cop.
Yep. Everyone shows up at some point.
I guess it would really be Lupin if it didn't have those people that way.
Exactly. Right. Funnily enough, don't get off this. That was a problem with Castle Cagliostro. I think we mentioned this in the review that Miyazaki did not want to include several of the characters, classic characters in that because they have nothing to do with the story, and he was basically forced to. He said, "No, you got to have them all in there." Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But fun film.